Autistic people bring unique skills and strengths to their jobs, but face strong biases in the hiring process. Research shows that employing autistic people can benefit both employee and employer. So how can we move towards acceptance of autism in the workplace? Stay tuned. When many people think of autism, they think of kids. Well, autistic kids grow up into autistic adults, and adults need jobs and sources of income to be independent. Our intro video promises to talk about science and how to use it, and today I hope to really deliver on that promise by looking at some concrete ways to make a difference in this area. So, let's talk about the research behind the autism underemployment problem, why you would want to hire an autistic person, and then how to overcome the first big barrier to autistic employment, the job interview. Before we get into the barriers autistic people face getting jobs, let's quickly address the question of whether this is really a problem in the first place. Even though autistic people have valuable skills, as many as 85% of autistic people are not in full-time work. And of those that are, 46% of them are underemployed. That is, they are overeducated or have higher skills than necessary for their job roles. Now that's a real problem because comfy blankets and chicken nuggies aren't gonna buy themselves. Of course, the first thing you have to do in order to get a job is a job interview, which, if there's a hell for autistic people, it's just an endless string of job interviews of ever-increasing pressure. So the entry into the job market is basically kryptonite for autistic people. But from an employer's perspective, why would anyone want to hire an autistic person? Especially if that means they have to alter their hiring process in some way. Besides just, being a decent person? Is that not reason enough? The research literature has shown that qualities of autistic people are often highly desirable to employers. Autistic traits result in a number of strengths, including analytical outside-the-box thinking, loyalty, honesty, attention to detail, dependability, regularly on time, low absenteeism, and so on. Studies like this one have shown this to be true. In this study, a bunch of employers who had autistic employees were asked about the strengths and weaknesses they perceived. But they also matched each employee that they had with autism to a neurotypical individual in the same job role for comparison. This study showed that, once hired, views of the autistic employees were overwhelmingly positive. They brought unique skill sets and creativity and provided valuable contributions, though there were sometimes a few interpersonal speed bumps with coworkers. Most of the employers said they would recommend hiring autistic people to their business associates and would hire other autistic people if the current employee were to leave. Importantly, because they were able to compare people in the same job role, they were able to show that the cost of hiring an autistic person was equal to hiring a neurotypical, with 0 employers reporting any loss of productivity and sometimes reporting higher productivity from the autistic employees. Employing autistic people can be highly beneficial to both employer and employee, and is probably the #1 way to reduce stigma surrounding autism diagnosis. So how do we improve rates of autistic employment and get people into jobs where their strengths can really shine? Up until fairly recently, the emphasis has been on training autistic people to camouflage their autistic traits and try to blend in with neurotypicals. Yes, we already walk among you. We've infiltrated and we're after your comfy blankets and chicken nuggies. But a person that doesn't speak French can only say, oui, oui, merci, croissant, for so long before it becomes incredibly limiting. And likewise, it's unreasonable to insist that an autistic person be someone they're not for most of their waking hours. So that leads us to the other side, getting employers to know what autism is, what to expect, and how to accept autistic people for who they are. The science surrounding the hiring process for autistic people has made some really interesting discoveries. Because autism is characterized by differences in social communication, one good starting point to study is the job interview, which requires high-stakes social interactions. Prejudice forms fast. Within a few seconds of seeing a person, people form judgments about whether they want to spend time with or interact with that person. Now, sometimes researchers call these thin slice judgments in the laboratory because they're made up of just a short slice of a video clip. Sometimes it's just a still picture. For example, in one study, researchers recorded video clips of college students auditioning for a mock game show. Some of the people in the videos were autistic and others were neurotypical. Researchers recorded their bodies and faces during the first 10 seconds of a social interaction, and those became the clips used in the experiment. Now that they had these short video clips, they brought in a large number of participants to rate the video clips. They presented the clips in 5 different ways: with audio and video, audio only, video only, a still image, or a transcript of what was being said during the clip. Each participant watched the clips and rated them on a variety of things like attractiveness, awkwardness, intelligence, likability, trustworthiness, whether they would be willing to talk with or hang out with the person, and so on and so forth. The results showed that the autistic participants were rated lower in every case where there was an audio or visual cue, even if it was just a still image from the video. However, if the participant read a transcript of what was said in the video clip, no difference was found between autistics and neurotypicals. In other words, it isn't the content of what is said, it's how it's said that seems to make the difference. These snap judgments can impact employment opportunities. Imagine that your written resume looks great and you get called in for an interview. The minute you speak or meet face-to-face or via video chat, the interviewer is making negative judgments about you, and none of it has any bearing on what kind of employee you will be. Perhaps this is why, even though 44% of autistic individuals have further education post-high school in the US, only 55% are employed. A new study was published a couple of weeks ago where researchers explored how traditional job interviews can create bias against autistic interviewees. In the study, they recorded videos of autistic and neurotypical people in mock job interviews. Then, participants in the study rated the individuals by either watching the interview or reading a transcript of the interview. You can guess what happened. The autistic people were rated lower in the video condition. It turns out, though, that the autistic people outperformed their neurotypical counterparts when only the transcripts were used. From transcripts, autistic interviewees were significantly more straightforward, attractive, enthusiastic, captivating, and qualified, according to the job raters. This suggests that the format of the traditional interview leads to biases against autistic people, causing autistic people to lose out on job opportunities and causing employers to lose out on employees that may actually be better employees. Okay, so what can we do about it? Well, one obvious answer from these studies is to require written interviews or transcripts of interviews to remove these biases. I know, it's really hard to convince people that they should trust an interview using only written materials and not actually meet the person before making a hiring decision. So maybe that option isn't always practical. You know what we need? More science! I found a recent study where 25 autistic and 25 neurotypical individuals conducted mock job interviews. Then, job recruiters from major companies reviewed each of the participants' answers and provided feedback on what they did or didn't say. As you can imagine, the bias against autistic interviewees was clear. The expert interviewers thought that the response quality of autistic people was lower compared to neurotypicals. But the researchers didn't stop there. They took the feedback on the responses and they adapted the interview questions, tweaked them just a little bit. So instead of asking, "What are some of your strengths?" they would say, "I'm going to ask you about your strengths. What do you consider to be your main strengths, things you're good at? How have you used these strengths at work?" They reworked all of their interview questions and then they conducted the interviews again with the new questions and had the hiring experts rate the new responses. One benefit was that everybody's score went up, even the neurotypicals. But importantly, these small changes to the interview questions helped to close the gap, such that the autistic individuals scored much closer to the neurotypicals. So by using better adapted interview questions, we can potentially boost everyone's score as well as reducing prejudice. Everybody wins. There's one more study I had to share with you guys. In this study, the goal was to see whether autism characteristics during the job interview influenced whether someone was likely to be hired, and also whether it would help or hurt if the person disclosed their autism diagnosis to the interviewer. They had their participants read a short vignette, a brief but detailed story about someone attending a job interview. They either exhibited autistic traits during the interview or not. Things like unusual eye contact, awkwardness, like standing nearby while the interviewer finished a phone call, and so on. In some vignettes, the person tells the interviewer that they are autistic on the application. In others, they do not. Now, as an additional comparison to other conditions, some of the vignettes disclosed that they had ADHD or diabetes in the job application. So we had 4 kinds of disclosure, each with a version displaying autistic traits or not displaying autistic traits, which gives us a total of 8 conditions in the experiment. The researchers measured things like how likely the participant was to hire the person in the vignette, but also, importantly, they measured how much the participant knew about autism. Unsurprisingly, the results showed that exhibiting autism characteristics reduced chances of being hired across the board, whether they had any disclosures or not. There was almost no cost to disclosing that you're diabetic, but disclosing ADHD or autism was risky. While those employers with little knowledge of autism perceived these disclosures negatively, it turns out that employers with better knowledge of autism rated those who disclosed their autism more positively. Now, one surprising result to me was that the stigma was actually stronger for ADHD than it was for autism. Diabetes was like, big deal. ADHD was like, no, I don't want to hire you. But autism was kind of somewhere in the middle. But the take-home message from me is that it is absolutely critical that the general public be exposed to what autism really is, not some stereotype, and learn the strengths of autistic people and how to understand autism traits as a normal part of the variety of human behavior. So what can you do to help? Share this video or other videos about autism from autistic people. We've got a playlist of our autism and neurodiversity videos that I'll link in the description. But the more people know about what autism is, the better they can accept autistic people and reduce stigma surrounding autism. If you like this video, hit the like button. Tell us what we're doing right in the comments. If you want us to make more videos like this one, touching on strengths and challenges of autistics in the workplace after being hired, let us know. We've got more autism content on the way for Autism Acceptance Month, so consider subscribing for more videos on all things psychology. And until next time, keep thinking. You got any ranch? We're coming for that too.